Hi, my name's Dust. You can see dust just go across the camera. Because I'm sitting in the corner. A very dusty collection of dolls. Anywho, my name's Valerie Parente, and I'm gonna read you some of my poetry from my first collection, The Artist, the Muse. There are poetry and prose pieces in here, and I'd like to read you them, and just some of them on the spot, and then we can talk about the background and do a little bit of analyzing. So let's just pick random pieces. These are pretty old. We've got some 2016, 2017. We're not going to read that one. Let's read The Silver Screen. I don't really remember what this is, but it's called The Silver Screen, and this is the artwork that goes with it. There's a flower, which it's hard to see in the video, but it's made out of lined paper with some of my poetry on it. And you can see the roots are these silver swirls. And I like to do these swirls because I kind of think of them as like the neuron fibers of an artist's brain. Because usually neuron fibers, dendrites, they're like branches. And I like to make them swirly and think of that as like, that's what an artist's dendrites look like in her brain, in her little brain cells. So I'm pretty sure that's why I did that, because that's what it makes me think of now. And that's why I do it now. But anyways, let's read the poem / prose. It's called The Silver Screen. My daydreams bloom from whatever prominent emotion I am feeling. My daydreams seem to subconsciously and intuitively unravel themselves into ideal scenarios. Like a movie, the daydreams play out in a succession of mental frames, on a cortical film reel. At best, the mental fabrication distributes its duty between the two-track mind, and I maintain my presence. Above the absolute threshold, I am in the audience, and below the absolute threshold, I am in the director's chair. The dialogues between imaginary friends on the silver screen happen so instantaneously that the script's origin teeters on the line between voluntary and involuntary awareness. My daydreams are finalized by obsessive and repetitive hindsight. When mentally reviewed, these fantastic mental purges reveal subliminal truths. The loose reins of control over the internal screenplay is regularly referred to as imagination, masquerade as intrusive images too appropriate and too satisfying to be resented. Holy shit. Okay. I don't remember much about that. I don't remember writing that at all. This was February 18th of 2017. And the best I can do to explain this, the silver screen. I know with silver, I always liked the concept of silver in my poetry a lot throughout The Artist, the Muse at this time, and in my book In Touch, where I reference silver in a couple of moments. Silver is something that I like because it makes me think of the phrase silver lining. And if you've watched my videos before and read my work, my whole point and the whole objective in what I'm writing is to find beauty in darkness. So I can talk about some dark moods and some upsetting things and pain, but I always want to find the positive spin in it and find the beauty in it and create art out of it, which is finding beauty in darkness. So I like the phrase silver lining because that's kind of what that means. It's finding a silver lining in things that aren't necessarily seen as good in some negative moments. So the silver screen, that was definitely on purpose referenced silver in the title because of finding positivity in something that you can see as a detriment, which in this case, it's all about daydreams. And this was at a time where my daydreaming was, so 2017 was 3 years ago. This was at a time when my daydreaming was more active than it is today. I had less of a social life when I wrote this, and it was very on purpose. I did that on purpose because I wanted to commit to art and storytelling, and I was working on my novels. So the reason why this was written, I believe, is commentary on how active my daydreaming was and my imagination, and how it could be seen as a problem because it was very interruptive of, approaching real life scenarios, very disruptive. But this whole piece is showing you how it is too, the daydreams are too artistic, meaningful, well played out to be considered a mistake or a fault. So let me just pull some lines from this. This was very wordy. Very, very wordy. And this was at a time when what I think I did here was I talk about the memory system. So if you take a psych class, they talk about absolute threshold, which is referenced here. It says, okay, so at best, the mental fabrication distributes its duty between the two-track mind, and I maintain my presence. Above the absolute threshold, I am in the audience, and below the absolute threshold, I am in the director's chair. Okay, so I don't remember the specifics of what this is in a textbook, but I know I read when I was taking a psych class about the absolute threshold and below the absolute, above the absolute threshold and below the absolute threshold has to do with memory, I believe, and processing, encoding information from the world. So you take in only like a certain percentage of what's around you. You only perceive a certain percentage of what's around you. And I think when you perceive it, that means that information is either above or below the absolute threshold. Looking at this, if you're the audience, when you're above, I think above the absolute threshold is when you can take it in, can perceive it. Don't quote me on that, because this is all, I'm just trying to remember. So it's referencing the two-track mind, which is something you learn about in like a memory unit and perception unit of a psych class. And it's using it to talk about daydreams being like a film reel. And it says, like a movie, the daydreams play out in a succession of mental frames on a cortical film reel. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people, daydreaming to me is like second nature. It's not as prevalent now that I'm older and take more like a different medication for my OCD. So it's not as prevalent as it used to be. It used to be my whole world. My whole world revolved around what I was making up in my head. So this was at a time when that was the case, and it came so second nature. Daydreaming came so second nature. It was like more of my reality than reality actually was. So for me, I really had to find the positive in it, and I could, because I could write stories because of it. I could go off in dialogues that aren't real but have characters talk to each other and find meaning in those dialogues, and I would record it and I could put it all in a plot. It was really important to me as an artist. It meant a lot to me, and this was the silver screen, finding that silver lining in that what can be seen as a detrimental imagination. Just, the real world doesn't compare to what I'm able to make believe in my head. But I didn't think that way. I thought of it as a very positive experience. My daydreams are finalized by obsessive and repetitive hindsight. Yeah, I mean, you go through these daydreams, you think about ideal scenarios, and this saying they're finalized by obsessive and repetitive hindsight. As someone with OCD, the daydreams, you don't daydream one scene just once. You keep thinking about it. And it's weird because you'd think that would be exhausting and annoying, that you'd be like, oh my God, why am I thinking about this again? But as someone with OCD, it's second nature. You really don't notice that this is weird. I often, when I'm talking to people, or even when I'm writing a draft, but when I'm talking to people, I will say the same thing in multiple different ways, and I'll catch myself later because I'm like, that was my OCD being very obsessive, wanting to get a point across, and it not getting across in my own psyche. I'm thinking I didn't get this point out yet, but I said it like 5 different ways already. So I notice that a lot now that I'm older and like more aware of it. When I'm talking to someone, I will like say the same idea in so many different ways. And I know like my sister is like, you already said that. Like, are you kidding me? You already said that. And like my friends, I think, have started to catch on, and they're like, you literally said this like 5 times. And I have to like check myself. So that's what I'm thinking of when it says my daydreams are finalized by obsessive and repetitive hindsight. Not until I do something, think something, a certain insane amount of times on repeat will it finally feel finalized, and I can move on and think about something else. And it's like the daydream is finalized. I wrote it down in many different ways. Finalized. Okay, cool. When mentally reviewed, these fantastic mental purges reveal subliminal truths. Yeah, every daydream, I think for anybody, there's subliminal shit in there, because you can actively be trying to think of something in a scene, but there's stuff in there that's very, the best way to say it is literally subliminal. It's in the back of your mind while you're thinking of this. I remember growing up when I was in high school, and I would get very frustrated. I was very miserable when I was in high school. I hated being there. I would get so frustrated and overwhelmed and sad that I would start daydreaming. My constant go-to daydream, the default, was daydreaming throwing up. And I constantly thought, why am I always daydreaming about throwing up? I don't throw up at all, like only if I have food poisoning. So why do I keep imagining I'm so upset sitting in science class in biology, teachers being mean to me, because I was very bad at science, and I had an evil teacher, but the teacher's being mean to me. I don't have friends in this class. I'm miserable. I just want to be doodling. I start seeing images of just being at a toilet throwing up. And I would constantly have these fantasies when I was frustrated. And it was subliminally. I didn't choose I want to throw up. Subliminally, is this getting blurry? There we go. Subliminally, I know that was really just a symbol for I was feeling so much distress that the best way to let it out was to just imagine purging, just letting it all out. And that was a subliminal daydream. That was a subliminal truth to how I was feeling that I didn't really understand at the time. But as I got older, I was like, oh, that's why I kept fantasizing about throwing up, because I was so overwhelmed with emotions and so upset and just felt trapped that I just wanted to have a release and let it out. So that is something I think of when I read this, being about how the daydreams can reveal subliminal truths, because they do. You do daydream about things that you don't realize some of the little actions and objects in those daydreams. They definitely, like regular dreams, they definitely have a subliminal meaning, and you can find that if you really examine it and think about it. Let's leave it at that, because there's a lot in there, but I don't remember a lot about it, so we'll just leave it at that, and let's read another one. That's an interesting one, kind of long though. I don't really feel like it. I'm not gonna read that one. I'm trying not to do like super personal ones right now. I'm just not in the mood. Yeah, not that one. Sorry. This is when I think I should choose them ahead of time. Let's go to the early ones. All right, there's another wordy one called Echoes that I could read. Oh no, let's read Ink. We're gonna read Ink. I remember this has similar artwork because it has the lined paper with poetry lines on it, and it makes up the hair of this girl. So Ink, I remember I wrote, it says in 2017, June 28th, and I remember submitting this in my creative writing class, the first creative writing class I ever took, and they really liked it, so I'm excited about this. Ink. Just leave that ink and tears to cry, let them fall in the blue lines, and create personal marks that record our beating hearts. Don't try too hard to define all the thoughts that plague your mind. When you turn your conscience off, a list of words becomes art. Vocabulary describes what makes chills tickle your spine. Suppress fears locked in the dark, motifs hidden in your plot. The whispers a pen provides are emotions summarized, broken up in royal parts by a new language monarch. So this is commentary on just like how amazing language is in writing. That's why it's called Ink, because it's about, the act of recording your thoughts. I really liked this one when I wrote it because it seemed very lyrical to me. The first paragraph, just leave that ink and tears to cry, let them fall in the blue lines and create personal marks that record our beating hearts. I think when I wrote that, I was like singing it in my head. And I definitely wrote this to be lyrical, to be like, it could be a song. And I know my creative writing class, they recognize that because they would sometimes get annoyed because a lot of the things I submitted it would be structured like a song. It would have like a chorus that repeats and they'd be like, oh my God, you're repeating the same thing again. This is a song. This is supposed to be creative writing poetry and whatnot, which, poetry and songwriting is very similar. But this goes kind of with what I was talking about in the last poem. It's weird how I end up randomly picking ones that kind of go with each other when I make these videos. But ink is also kind of about your subconscious. It says, when you turn your conscience off, a list of words becomes art. And before that, it says, don't try too hard to define all the thoughts that plague your mind. That's when writing can be magical. And that's what I've been experiencing lately. I've been working on, I love it so much. I've been working on a fantasy poetry series right now. And it's so fun to write. And it's just total make-believe, fantastical creatures and shit. And what I've been finding when I write it, which is when I write my best, is I'm not doing too much thinking. It's kind of just coming to me. The rhymes just come. And there is something that paranormal, in like paranormal books that they talk about, I think it's called spirit writing, where you kind of just, you write and they say like it's, you know, spirits channeling through you, using your hand to write, and people will write out things that they don't know where it came from. It's not literally that, but that is when I write my best, when it feels like I don't know where it's coming from. I know it's in my head, but it feels like it already existed in the universe, and I'm just finding the words to describe this energy that exists. So when you don't try too hard, that's when you create your best art, at least from my point of view. And that's a lot of what this ink is about. It's really about not trying too hard. Vocabulary describes what makes chills tickle your spine, suppressed fears locked in the dark, motifs hidden in your plot. Again, these hidden ideas that you don't really realize in your psyche, but they come out when you're daydreaming and you examine it, or your actual dreams and you examine the symbols, or like you're writing and you write something, you don't know why you wrote it, but you look through it and you try to understand, why did this parallel my psyche? And it's eerie. It'll cause, the vocabulary does cause chills to tickle your spine, because it's eerie when you see that you were able to create something without consciously trying. That was so meaningful. It makes you think, like, humans are amazing. The human brain is insane. The whispers a pen provides are emotions summarized, broken up in royal parts by a new language monarch. Yeah, the broken up in royal parts is really just like when I was really into formula-based poems, stanzas, or when I was writing songs and I was doing verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus. So that's, I know I was directly referencing that when I said broken up in royal parts by a new language monarch. Because being a poet or being a writer, you are like the king or queen of language. It's amazing. Language is insane. The fact that we can make sounds or write symbols and know what the other person is thinking and be able to translate what's in my head to your head with the sounds that I make or the lines on paper, it's crazy. So it is no understatement to call, you know, anyone who writes anything a language monarch. Wow, this video is going by fast. It's already 18 minutes. Let me really quickly read one more. Really quickly. We'll do a very short one. And I won't get too into it. A lot of the ones early in the Artist the Muse are long. Damn. Wow, a lot of these are long. No. No, we're not doing anything that's lovey-dovey. Fuck that. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Mars by Valerie Parente. I hold on to the moments where I am seen, using the past to verify my identity. But identifying with the ego is toxicity. By equating your nature to personality, you lose touch with the potential of who you could be. Yeah, okay, I know what this is about, and I know why it was called Mars. It seems random that it was called Mars. Mars because it's the 4th planet from the sun, right? If I'm wrong, that's embarrassing, but I think that's what I thought when I wrote this. Mars is the 4th planet from the sun, and the 4 is important because this is about being a type 4 personality in the Enneagram diagram, and the Enneagram, like, personality, spirituality, typology. So if you've ever heard of the Enneagram, it's super interesting. We took a personality test when I was a freshman in high school, and I felt like I got the answers to everything that I had ever wondered about myself. So I love the Enneagram. It's ENNEAGRAM. So this is about being a type 4. That's why it's called Mars, 4th planet. I didn't know what to call it. And this really describes what the personality type is. When you read the summary of this personality type, highly recommend you guys buy this book. But this is what the type 4 is like. Holding on to the past. I hold on to moments where I am seen and wanting the attention. Using the past to verify my identity. Same thing. But identifying with the ego is toxicity. So this part, but identifying with the ego is toxicity. By equating your nature to personality, you lose touch with the potential of who you could be. This is all a common theme in the Enneagram. So the Enneagram kind of lays out, and it makes a lot of sense, whether it's true or not. It's a good like idea to symbolize what you are. I believe it goes, your soul is up here, and that's also called your essence. That's what you truly are. And then it breaks down into ego, personality. So different personality types, identifying with a personality type, having a very active personality type that's hard to break, that's actually a bad thing, because you're less of yourself. Your full soul essence does not have that personality. That's a human thing. That narrows down this infinite thing that you are, which is your soul. So it is seen in that typology as toxic to identify with the ego and to be so stuck on your ego self, because that's not the real you. And your real nature, they call it your essence, does not have personality. Personality is something in the human world. And by equating your nature to personality, your true nature is not personality, but by equating your nature to personality, you lose touch with the potential of who you could be, because you are infinite. You could be anything, but personality is very, it confines you. It keeps you in a box, when your true self, on and off this world, in the next life, is the actual essence of it is so much bigger than just minuscule personality that your brain has. We're not going to go super into that. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm glad I read that, because I highly recommend you guys look at the Enneagram typology. I don't know the website exactly, but just Google Enneagram typology. You can take an exam and then buy the books. I got it on Amazon, one textbook that's amazing. It's Wisdom of the Enneagram. So beautiful, and it's very spiritual, and it's something that I've lived my life by, and it really has served me well. So, anywho, should probably talk about my own book. If you want to buy The Artist, the Muse, feel free to grab it on Amazon, and check out my website. I have a lot of poetry and prose on there too. It's valerieparente.wordpress.com. And I guess thank you for watching is all I have left to say. Bye.